Hello and welcome. This is a conversation beyond the mystic, and this is the first of its kind. And I'm so grateful to have one of my favorite friends, clients, amazing healers of the world to join us in this conversation. Nancy Valentine Smith, thank you so much.
Thank you, Libby. It's wonderful to be here and working with you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. So, I really want to have a conversation where we can dive a little bit deeper beyond what people might see, because you do show up online, you host your own events and workshops and things like that. But I really love to have real conversations because, especially online, it can all seem rainbows and kittens, and that's not always the reality. And so when I'm working with healers, they think it should be a certain way, when in reality we all have this stuff that we go through. So
That's
let's
right.
just see where the conversation goes. But I'd love for you to share a little bit about where it all began for you.
Oh my goodness, it's such a big story, so I'll keep it as simple as possible. I've always been in the spiritual world. I've not known any other way. So from a very young age, I would even go back to when I was a baby. So even as a baby and my whole life growing up home, mum and dad, being in Fiji, it was in the spirit realm. So our life was very different. You know, the simple fact of coming from a place like Fiji, and it's very much naturally integrated, you know, by different beliefs in our culture. So, you know, of what to do and what not to do in terms of spiritual stuff. They would say what's taboo and what's not taboo and what's not taboo. And that's the sort of thing I grew up in. And then, so that was quite normal. And then there were extra factors because I've always been a seer. So as a child and now, I've always seen quite clearly the spirit world. For me, it's always been there. And I come from a family on mum's side and dad's side who have worked as healers, who have been in the spirit world and connected to that. Both of my grandmothers, in particular my mother's mother, my grandmother, who is what we say is Bumbo, which is Fijian for grandmother. So she comes from a line of spirit people who do medicine work, who do seeing work. So for me as a child and all my life, it's predominantly been a high percentage of being in the spirit world. So I would say it would be 70 to 80% of my life has been in the spirit world and the other in the earth. So that's how it's been. So it's been very normal for me. You know, very, very normal for me, to the point of, you know, when we came out to Australia. So it's very potent in Fiji. And I think for me and for my family, when I was in Fiji, there was that bit of an extra thing with me because, like I said, I would see quite strongly and I would have really what be considered now paranormal experiences, but really it was my connection to the inner earth and the elements. So there were a lot of stories about what relatives would encounter when they would come and visit, of seeing me in sort of unusual paranormal little events that little Nancy would be having, you know, like a far out Hollywood movie instead of Children of the Corn or Wheat. Mine was Child of the Sugarcane Fields. And so,
Can you share one of those with us? I find it really fascinating.
well, I used to apparently go on adventures. So it would have been around 2, 3 years old, and I would just wander off. And I would wander off from the house. Dad was working during the day, and so was mum. So pretty much my grandparents brought me up, which is quite common in the islands, and that grandparents look after the grandkids and so on, and I was very close. I was very close to my grandparents, in particular my grandfather. But the story goes, I would wander off, so they'd have to have little search parties. But in this wandering off, I would find myself in, I can't remember how I got there, but I would find myself in certain situations. One in particular, I'll share two stories quite first. One in particular is that I had wandered off. I was really little, and I could hear the full-on drums. There was drums. I could hear drums playing, and I could hear chants. And I remember being on this hill and peering over the hill and seeing a procession, and it was a big Hindu festival. And I remember as a child seeing these, what I would say were yogis, were devotees, and they had the piercings connected. I forgot what it was connected to. And there were a lot of flowers, a lot of orange, and the chanting and the drums. I would have been only around between 2 and 3. And that was really, for me, just transported to another place, because I wasn't just seeing the festival, I was seeing the spirit of that energy. And then out of nowhere, I felt something going into my ears. And I looked in the peripheral, and there were fingers this long in my ears. And I looked, and there were beings about 3 to 4 feet with very long faces, big ears, which I know now were the little men or elves. Mm-hmm. So seeing them was frozen, and that was my first introduction to them. And then they started talking to me telepathically. So what they were saying, we'd like you to do this, all the different things. So what happened was, after that event, my dad's pipe would go missing, his tobacco would go missing, his shoes would go missing, and I would be putting them in the tall grasses or the sugarcane for these little beings. So those sort of things happening. Another time was when I apparently was lying somewhere in tall vegetation, apparently lying flat on the ground, and someone had come over to visit and saw my little legs sticking out, probably going, oh, what is she doing? And then seeing me and seeing my body moving backwards. In my space, it was the little men playing and pulling me backwards. I was I was giggling, but from their perception, and what's really funny, Libby, when I hear stories, I would go, well, what did you do? Did you come and check on me? And the common thing was, no, we just ran away quickly.
We just left you to it.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah. So that was really strong. So when I came, it's really interesting. I just made a connection to what's happening now in my journey and what I'm about to share. So when we came to Australia, I suffered like depression as a child, because it was the disconnection from the land and the energy and the spirit. But I think it was the 3rd or 4th night being in Australia that the little ones arrived. Mm-hmm. So they're like, we're here. But because of the energy lines here, it got a bit wobbly. So it whole changed. So, and then when I was here, I started to speak in tongues as a child. So I'd wake up and be speaking in tongues, would sleepwalk, would go into a trance. So, those early years of being in Australia, those primary school years. So that was, like I said, it's been constantly there. I was very blessed to have a mum who totally understood what I was going through.
Amazing.
So yeah, she would call me back. So when I go into these spaces of being in trance or heading off, and then what would happen, whatever would come through would start speaking in tongues and different old languages. My mum used to bring me back, and she always knew how to bring me back.
Mm.
Yeah. So,
Wow.
spirit world's always been there.
Always been a part of you. Absolutely.
It still
Wow.
is, you know.
Yes. And that's the thing, you do work so hard, not only with your clients where you help with the healing and the shifting among humans, but you also do a lot of behind the scenes work with energy lines, ley lines
Yes.
across the earth, the waterways
Mm-hmm.
in the stars, on certain councils, and
Yes.
whether it's today or not, I would love to kind of dive into some of those
Yes,
conversations as
definitely.
well.
Absolutely.
I'm really curious because one thing that I find in conversations with the people that I work with who are practitioners of different modalities is that there is a resistance around the word healer.
Mm.
And, I think a lot of that is because we feel that you're it's not actually that you're healing somebody, it's that you're holding the space and shining the light and providing the guidance for them to go on that healing journey themselves. What's your views around that term healer?
Oh, that's an interesting one because I totally agree with what you've just said. I think we're here because I think we are our own healers, and there are some of us that are there to exactly what you say is to hold the space. We're able to hold the space, and some of us are able to see where that person cannot see or cannot reach,
Yeah.
and being a guide, a guide
Mm.
for a person to do that, because ultimately it's about what was I going to say? Ultimately, it's about holding the support and platform to people to move into their own self healing.
Yeah.
Okay, and so that eventually people are just doing that naturally. So
Mm.
I think we have a role to be able to see for people. So I like to say healing is it's the client that ultimately heals themselves, and we're able to see with a light, with a light. You
Yeah.
know,
And
they
see
can
some of
do.
the blind spots that
Yeah,
that they
yeah,
can't otherwise see. Yeah.
absolutely, and able to go. Listen, I can get in there. I can get into this spot. I can move this because at this time you're not able to reach this or have an understanding of how to unblock or have an understanding how to clear that heaviness,
Yes. Yeah.
and because you're going through so much emotion when someone is so much in pain and in their emotions, they're they're not able, there's a process to get to a point where you're in the flow of being able to do the work on yourself.
Yeah.
Okay. And so that takes a long while. So I don't mind the word healer. Okay. I don't mind the word healer. It's just, what does it mean
Yes.
to the facilitator and to the client? you know
Yes.
so what does it mean, and what energy and power are you putting in, and how are you holding that you know
Absolutely. The intention behind the use of the
yeah,
word.
yeah,
Yeah.
because the word is a really beautiful, powerful word. So if we were in an indigenous community or in a village or in a village or in a tribe, it'd be like there are healers there. There are seers. There are warriors. You know, there there are those that build the canoes. There are those that plant and harvest the food. We're all equal. So let's go and see the healer, because you know, little one's here has got an abscess on his tooth. Let's go to the
Mm-hmm.
village, and there's herbs. So that to me, in that, um, yeah, it's an interesting one. You've got me thinking, Miss Libby. It's a really interesting one because I think healer is the term healer is a very I think it's been thrown around too much in the modern. I think
Yes.
it's a very sacred title and a sacred word.
Mm.
I know in the old days a healer, you just weren't just a healer. You'd go through an initiation,
Mm-hmm.
process, your apprenticeship with apprenticeship. So if I was still in that tribe or in a village, there'd be either my niece or someone
Mm.
younger who I would look at and go, she has the ability, the gift, come and sit with me, come and watch. So she would go through her apprenticeship, and then maybe after a few months or whatever, come hold.
Yes.
That
Yeah.
to me is, I relate the word healing. I think in these modern times, and I think with a lot of modalities, I would say I would use the word facilitator,
Yeah.
facilitating, but it's healing. Yeah,
Yes. Yeah.
healer for me is has a sacred lineage.
Mm.
It has that's
Yes.
yeah, it has more of a lineage.
I love that you brought up about that, that apprenticeship training, because your training has been quite unique
Yes,
in a sense of how you've learnt and the connections that you have, and how you currently help your clients, your members, and anybody who kind of follows you.
yeah.
So can you share a little bit about your training, your
Well, at a very young age, so I feel when I came in of that direct connection to spirit. Spirits were always around, and I could see them as a toddler and as a baby. Like the energy. At a certain age, my grandmother, my bumbo, showed me and taught me a lot of things by her actions and what she would do and how she would hold me and where she would put me on the earth and where, just different things, what she would say to me. And it was a lot of what she would do. Okay, so growing up, it was quite normal. But I've been blessed to be around a lot of people who are incredible healers and incredible medicine people and shamans. But my training comes directly from spirit.
mm,
So as a young child, um, when we came to Australia, started to get visits from teams of what I know now were the ascended ones.
mm,
So I grew up in a Catholic environment. So
mm,
my father's family are Catholic, my mother's family are Methodist. So I went to a Catholic school, which I actually was overwhelmed by the pageantry and the rituals.
mm,
Okay, so for me, there was things I saw beyond on an energetic that wasn't the 3D. So what started to happen is that a doorway opened at a young age in primary school. Because I was able to see and have connections that I work with now very, very, very super closely. But as a child, I didn't have the language for it.
mm,
So I was able to move through doorways, okay, but didn't have the language for it. So my first teacher that came through were a conglomeration, is that the word,
mm-hmm,
of ascended beings. And
mm-hmm,
then at the age of 7, Yeshua started to come through and started to teach me about the astral plane and the lower astral. Because the lower astral was where I was when I was with my grandmother. So there were a few things which I won't go into because it's a very long story, where she would take me into some really heavy spaces that I actually am so grateful because I learnt about the dark. Okay, and I want to make it quite clear, it wasn't for me to work with the dark, it was for me to learn about it and go through an initiation of being able to face it and transmute it within me that's in my lower astral embodiments. So I was actually looking back, learning about a lot of knowledge and going through initiations that you would have gone through in the mystery schools of old. But I was going through it in the way I was with my grandmother, and then Yeshua arrives at the age of 7 and starts teaching me, let's say, the lectures of what I was going through and what I had been through about the lower astral. And so Yeshua started teaching me about the different worlds within our being. Now, all of this is then becomes absorbed, right? Becomes absorbed that eventually it comes out as wisdom. And it comes out of wisdom, and he taught me this. He said, you will one day, when you are very, very older woman, in those words. I notice I didn't say old. Not that
No,
there's anything wrong with it. Older woman. In those words, that you will share this knowledge. Okay? But he also said, but first, for this to be shared, you must and you will go through the trials and tribulations to turn it into gold. So he started teaching me the basis of alchemy,
Right.
but taught me that my life and all lives is an alchemical journey. So remember, I'm only 7 years old. He's teaching me a lot, and he would turn up, and he would turn up, and he would turn up in the middle of the night, and I'd sit up and there and start getting the downloads and listening, and I would feel. And so in my days at school, I'd go to school, primary school, playing hopscotch, skipping, having a fight with my girlfriends, and then I would run off to the church. Okay, run off to the church, not allowed in the church, sneak into the church, and I would find sanctuary. Because for me, it was when I would go through the portals. Okay, so I would sit in the church and I would connect, and I went to a school called Saint Teresa. And so it's funny enough, guys, this saint was the saint of the rose. So if you know my work, I work a lot with the rose energy.
Yes.
So I would be sitting in this church, and she would come and sit next to me, and there was a lot of comfort. So I felt a lot of comfort. So that's what I mean. My whole life has been in spirit, and so that's my journey. But Yeshua has always said to me, this is about you remembering. We're here, and I'm here to assist you to remember your wisdom. Okay, and then Mary Magdalene
Yes.
comes in later when I was at the age of 10.
Right.
So she starts entering my life at the age of 10, and I tell you what, from the age of 10 till 12, 13, the amount of light that I would wake up, and it was just pure white light that would greet me before I came to. So, and then that was a completely different journey. And then around the age of 13, she said, I will always be here, but I'm going to move back a bit now. You're going to go through the time of trials and tribulations. but we will meet again. And she said, and she basically said, from a distance, we're going to now prepare you for a deep, deep heart break time. And then at 14, my mother passes away. So you know what? Even though spirit was there and I was prepared, because I was prepared. They would send me dreams before my mum died about what was going on. But everyone knows I was still a child. So even though I was connected to
Yes.
spirit, it was a child. So there was still overwhelming because of my earthly self and a lot of confusion because I was seeing mum was there and she passed away from breast and lung cancer. And so I would see before they diagnosed the lung cancer, I was then shown what was happening to her lungs. And then Dad would come home and we'd find out 3 weeks after I'd seen what I was seeing that she had lung cancer. Or would go to the hospital to visit her and I couldn't look at her because I saw what I know now as the angel of death behind her,
Right.
And so, and the last time I saw the angel of death behind her and compassionate energy just radiating out towards me and my sisters. And I remember saying, I'm not going to see her again. So, meaning I chose not to go back to the hospital. It was too much. So the night she died, my dad and my two sisters had gone to see mum, and I chose not to. And that night at about 2 a.m, I was in bed and I woke up, sat up, and in the doorway. So the light had come on in my room, and in the doorway was my mum. And she had a wedding dress on. Okay, and she walked over to me and she kissed me on my forehead, and gently tucked me in and walked out and just looked back and smiled. And then Dad woke us up a couple of hours later and said Mum had passed.
Yeah.
You know,
Wow.
so my mum was definitely one of my soulmates. Sorry, guys, I'm getting teary. But it doesn't matter. You could have all the spirits with you, and I've grown up with it constantly. And I was being prepared, and I seen all of this. But, sometimes on my journey, I wish I hadn't seen. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yes.
I wish I
Yes.
hadn't seen. So I think we've gone so around the corner from the question you asked me.
It doesn't matter.
So,
I love
so
it.
guys, I'm 54 and I still miss my mama. Still
Yeah.
miss my mama. She was just she I would say she was definitely a rose sister. Her being, her energy. I grew up with a mother who just emanated. She had complete, beautiful love connection to Source, to God, but not in a religious way. And I grew up with parents who were so incredibly kind. I grew up in a household, if you can imagine, of so many people in our house that come home from after school and they'd be like, who the hell are these people? My parents always, our house was open. I remember Dad running off to help. That time, this shows how old I am, help the milkman, give him money because he'd lost it, through gambling, or helping out another fella at work, or a young fella who's going through stuff, or, just mum and dad were like that. So so that's what we grew up in, and my mum was just an incredible, definitely connected to the Magdalene vibrations. She was. absolutely divine.
Amazing.
Anyway,
Amazing. It's beautiful to hear because I haven't heard a lot about your mum. So it's really
yeah,
beautiful.
yes.
Can you share just a little bit of how you help your clients now with the one-on-one sessions? I know that that's one thing that I'd love to talk about too. Is I know that with most healers and facilitators, there is a capacity, there's a ceiling that you hit with the work that you do. How do you help your people, and at what point have you reached that ceiling of like, I don't know how much longer I can, or how I can fit in helping any more people?
Right. Look, it's changed over the years as I've grown and as I've landed more in this aspect of me. The work has changed quite a lot. I think where I am right now is I think the work that flows and channels through me is best suited to people who have been on the spirit journey for a long while. I work with a lot of clients that have a very strong spiritual life themselves. A lot of facilitators, a lot of people on their own personal initiation process. So my way to assist is to help clear and unblock anything that is still of density for them to connect and move to their next level, and that is in many ways that to do with their ancestry, or to do with past lives, or to do with childhood, but it's more on an energy. So a lot of people have already done a lot of work on these areas.
Yeah.
Is that I work on coming in and going, okay, there's just that one area, one spot that we need to shift. So I think it's more is transmutation.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
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 And I think for me at this moment with the work on one-on-one, I know as this year moves on, they're going to become less because I'm moving more into different aspects of the work. And that is to bring in these celestial frequencies and vibrations more in the activations, and bringing in an alchemical fusion to the activations for groups. Okay, for groups to get it
Yeah.
out there. It's almost like getting the message out there quicker. So that's, I feel like that's where the work is. It's time now to fully, from what the team said, is to now time to fully now step into what I'm here to do, which is to activate activate, I suppose, God, words are so limiting, activate the way of the heart. Okay, the way of the heart through, in the old days we would say the ministry of Mary Magdalene and Yeshua, but I feel that it's even bigger than that, and that's what they're saying. It is about, one of the things that I facilitate is the beloved teachings.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah,
And I think that feeling, you're not alone in that
yes,
feeling of there's we need to reach even more people, and people are ready.
yes,
I think we're
yes,
at that moment where it's like, okay, we're at that vibration and that level of expansion that people are ready
yes,
for this work and bringing it into their lives and having it activate. There's a better understanding of well, there's more curiosity
yes,
around this work, and that's all we need. The curiosity creates the awareness, and that really kicks off that cycle of expansion for us.
yes,
And that's what's so exciting. And it's really hard to assist expansion one on one.
yeah,
Especially hour with every client. So that's what excites me so much, is seeing yourself and a lot of facilitators like you who are really ready to reach even more. And that's where the impact comes from. That's where we start to see the ripple effects across the globe, with this beautiful curiosity that's coming into humanity about the invisible, about the unseen. And, it's time to have the conversations around it so that we start to demystify it a little bit as well.
Absolutely, because it's such a very massive space, the spiritual world. And I know there are many healers and facilitators that work on the different levels, and that's really important. That's really, really important. In the old days, when I was younger, I'd do a lot of work in clearing stuff around the astral and lower astrals, and stuff around, attachments, entities, and even, worked with an incredible, medicine man, shaman, in assisting him in clearing this. But I don't do that anymore. But that is so necessary, and there's some incredible healers that do that, and that's needed. That's needed because there will be a lot of people who need to clear that, and there'll be a lot of people that need to clear their emotional pain and their wounds. Everyone is awakening, and then there'll be, those, like, I feel like myself, who are being called now to hold a bigger space, to bring in what we call the Divine Mother, or the Divine Feminine scriptures, and I'm talking literally as an energy, or the old days, and I use these terms because they're the terms I can relate to. The Divine Feminine Gospels, the Mary Magdalene, her revelations. It's this is a time where all of us, no matter who we are, being activated to be that channel, to be that lighthouse, to be that vessel, and so we can assist those to become a lighthouse and the vessel for the next. It's a layer upon layer upon layer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So as you've been on this journey, starting out where most people start out, with assisting, people one-on-one, start with friends and family, then you build clients, and that journey progresses. As you have lent in, because you've been offering a membership for a while now, and doing, pre-COVID, it was face-to-face workshops, and then they've moved online. What are some of the challenges and the struggles that you felt in shifting from the one-on-one to the group work?
Well, I think for me, it's hasn't been that much struggle shifting from one-to-one to group work. For me, it's more, what I really love more than anything else is doing the group work, but doing also the group work organically, face to face. I miss those. Those are really important, because it's that connection. It's we're in the room. We're in the room. There's just, and when you're bringing in and channeling in those beautiful energies, it's the organic experience of everyone there moving into alignment and having synchronistic openings, and that impacts us individually, because the group is having that activation. So it takes the individual into a bit more of a quickening process with that support. And I miss that. So that's the challenge. I miss that, is going back to that, which I will be. I'm going to start doing the live group connections through the Beloved Teachings, through activation days again, starting from May onwards. So that's the only thing that I've missed doing. And I've actually found, interesting enough, since we've all been online, sort of in a weird way, it's been good, but it's sort of in the way I found that it's the work, you're working more. I
Yes.
don't know how, but I find that
Yes.
I'm not saying you're working more with more clients, it's more of a energy thing.
Yes. Well, especially you, because we work closely, and you don't stop. You don't
Yeah.
stop.
And that's
And
right. I just want to quickly say, guys, because she won't let me. She Libby, but I want to say, I really need to say this. Like, I've been doing this work for a really, really long time, and Libby has assisted me big, massive time. Gonna get teary again to able to get this work out much more wider and in a bigger space. So she has been a pillar and a rock for me, and not only because she's helped me with the social media, with getting out the activations and the courses on Zoom, on Kajabi, and all that stuff. Okay, but what was the most important thing for me is that she has been absolutely in the space of love with me, and I can only work with the work and with someone. She's held the space for me. She has always showed up for me and understood how I work with this work to get it out there, and that's been really important. I have not had to worry about all that admin and 3D stuff, but I have never felt judgment from this woman when I go off into my dream time and she's there going, okay. And I'm like, hey, Libby, you know that stuff you need for me to send out? Well, I'm not feeling it. I'll be sending it out.
yep,
She always goes, yep, not a problem. That's
yep.
okay. And
It's all
that is,
divinely perfect. It's all
yes,
good.
she says that sometimes I get off the phone and go, oh my God, sometimes I go, she's wonderful. Other times I get off and go, oh my God, she should kick me up the ass. No, no. And I don't want you to, by the way.
Well, there's been some slight nudges sometimes, and I think that just comes with experience, and because of the length of time we've been working together now. But
Yeah.
sometimes I can feel a little nudge, and
Yeah,
and I'm
she
like,
does.
is that really true? Let's just dive into that a little bit, Nance. And you're like,
Always diving,
okay,
guys.
you've called me out on that one. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But
So
it's been so
thank you, Libby.
beautiful. Thank you so much. And the beautiful thing is, though, that you've been brave
Sorry.
enough. Yeah.
Yes. I'm just gonna get sorry guys, so uncool. I'm just gonna need my charger because I'm about to run out. This
Yeah,
phone's
no worries.
draining. So I'm just gonna ask this person in the distance to get my charger.
Marky Mark and the Funky Bunch. Um,
Yeah. Hey, you guys might
but
get to meet my partner if he gets
I that's the one thing that I want to acknowledge too, though, is that you were ready. So even when there's fears come up, even in the early days of your membership, if you remember, there was tears. There was I'm backing out of this. We're not launching this. And I just want to acknowledge you for that, because you were brave enough to ask for help, which can
Yes.
be tricky as a spiritual entrepreneur, an intuitive coach, whatever field you're in.
Yes.
Actually asking for help is one
Yes.
thing, and then being brave enough just to realize that,
Oh,
yes, these are fears
oops.
coming up.
Sorry.
Yes, you're right. We need to transmute these fears, so
Yes.
that we can have that impact across the world. So yeah, it really is. I want to acknowledge you in that
Yes,
as
because
well,
it's
because
always a
you were
journey.
ready.
Every aspect of our lives, whether we yeah. And that's really important. Like I said, I've been doing this work for a very, very long time. And to take it to a space of getting it out there, for those of you who are facilitators, to get it out there to that next level, it is not just getting it out there, but there is a process that you go through. energetically, emotionally to clearing. So I was really blessed to connect with Libby, because for me, I needed to connect with someone who I could go, hey, this is what I'm going through, this is what I'm feeling. And for someone Libby, to hold the space as I went through that healing and transmutation and all of that. So this journey, and it's always the way, because Yeshua, one of the things he taught me when I was a child is that your whole life is about the resurrection, is about the ascension. Everything you go through, everything you go through is about the coming to and growing and evolving. Those weren't the words, but that was the sentiment. It's about remembering. It's about remembering who you are, so you can walk on this planet with the Sacred Heart. So one of the things he taught me was that in his journey, okay, he didn't go and sit for hours, in the spirit world, in the spirit realm. His life, his journey, his trials and tribulations, his time in the astral, and his time of torment, and his time that led him up to the simple, the one of the timeline events of the crucifixion, was all part of his initiation into self-realization. Because so he said, you're here to realize the divinity in you through your physical life and your being. And that's what we're actually in at this moment, but en masse. So all the time with Yeshua, with Siddhartha, with Siddhartha ascending into Buddha, with all the great mystics and masters, the ascended ones, that's what it was. It was their journey, and that's what we're all doing, okay? And so people like myself have been able to assist others in all we're doing is helping to clear the density, and what Mary Magdalene has said to me, the false testaments that are in your being. Okay, so that's what it is. It's simple as that. There are many pathways to that, many stream of consciousness. Yeah.
So beautiful. Well, as we wrap up this conversation, I just want to also point out the benefit of not only these conversations, but the benefit of facilitators moving into the group work, because as you mentioned, with the live events, that you miss, and with the events that you hold online, there is an amazing amplification that happens. Something that there's an energy and a level that is achieved, I believe, by the coming together of people in that group format compared to the assistance of the one-on-one. So I know that some people have had a bit of a fear or a belief around, it won't be as potent, it will be diluted if I take my work from one-on-one with my client over into a group workshop or a membership or something like that. But there is actually a huge amplification that happens with the community energy and the vibration that the group holds. So, if that has been a bit of a question in your mind, and I know that your amazing followers and your loyal members would advocate for that when the group comes together, it really is quite unique and very, very potent. So I just want to say thank you so much for doing the work, for showing up for us, for being that light and that guide for all of us who need it at this point in time on this earth. Yeah.
Thank you, Libby. Thank you.
So thank you so much for this conversation. Let's connect again and dive even deeper. I've written some notes here I would love to dive into, but thank you for sharing, and thank you for putting us into your calendar to have this conversation. I really appreciate you.
Thank you, Libby.
Thanks so
Thank
much,
you,
everyone.
everybody.
Bye.